everyone feeling fresh? Happy? Yeah. Yay. I'm Liz Stokes. I am the editor of a publication called Record of the Day in the UK that hopefully lots of you are aware of. So obviously we want to nail marketing this afternoon. And I think the thing that's really interesting about marketing at the moment is there is no rule book. You know, we've got more platforms than ever. People's attention spans are split between so many different things that marketing has to be snappy, it has to be quick, it has to grab you, and then it has to hold you. And I think it's just a super challenging and interesting time. So I think let's kick off by introducing yourselves without being too kind of blind date about it. Do you want to say who you are and where you're from?
My name's Emily and I'm from Nottingham. I'm Emily Scoggins. I'm head of marketing at the O2, the world's most successful live music venue. What more?
I'm Fred. I'm vice president of strategy at Sony Music, and I'm very pleased to be on a correctly, finally gender panel.
I'm David Emery from Cobalt. Okay, no, I'm not, but I did stand in for David earlier. But for any of you who might have seen that and wondering who I am, my name's Lucy Blair. I am Director of International Sales and Marketing at The Orchard, which basically means I head up sales and marketing for UK and Europe.
And I'm Karma Belson. I'm the marketing manager at a promoter called Kilimanjaro Live.
What kind of artists do Kilimanjaro promote for?
We promote an array of artists from people like Ed Sheeran and the 1975, all the way to the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and also sort of like small upcoming artists that play small, like 100 capacity venues. For example, we've got Rag and Bone Man, and we've been promoting him for years, since he was playing small barflies.
Wicked. Okay, so Lucy, I'm going to kind of look to you to kick this off because you wrote a really interesting blog recently. They got loads of traction. I know you're doing a Fast 15, but do you just want to quickly introduce the kind of things that you were talking about in that blog? Because I think it's a really good place to start about where marketing is now.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I am doing Fast 15 on this at 2:45 downstairs, if anyone would like to come. Bit of self-promotion. I was supposed to do it yesterday, but unfortunately my flight was delayed, as was everyone else's. So it's kind of centering on a blog post I wrote a few weeks ago about storytelling in music, because that seems to be kind of the biggest buzzword in the industry right now. I was kind of focusing on, I think as marketers, it's really easy to get sucked into just thinking about the artist's story and sort of how you communicate that to the audience. But I feel like actually the most interesting part of an artist's story and trying to tell that is actually then looking to the audience and finding out actually what is their story. Because when you think about music and you know how it makes you feel, it's kind of about how you relate to that music. You know, maybe there's a song about a breakup that speaks to you because you're going through a similar thing that the artist is writing about at the time. You know, I think a lot of how you relate to music is very dependent on how it kind of fits in with what's going on with you and your life at the time. And, you know, when you think about how music can sort of take you back to a point in your life, you know, you're not thinking when you think of that music and whatever it reminds you of, you're not thinking about, you know, the lyrics and what they meant to the artist at that time. Is what it meant to you at that time. I think we're in a very interesting place where we're still a bit too focused on one side of the story, a bit too focused just on the artist side of the marketing, but not actually knowing enough about the audience, because, you know, we have more access to data than ever before, but actually we still don't really know what motivates somebody to become a fan, and what motivates them to come back and listen to your music and, you know, become more than a casual listener. And we don't, you know, we have lots of great data, but we don't actually have that kind of data. We're still looking at audiences in quite sort of broad brushstrokes, I think, sort of like really big groups. But we're not able to kind of like drill down into individual sort of motivations and context behind people's listening and how they relate to the artist and the music and how that sort of fits in with their own story.
I think the whole kind of fan-centric thing is really interesting, and we are going to talk about data because it's 2017 in the music industry and we don't talk about anything else. But Emily, coming from the O2, I mean, obviously the fans pay your wages. So how are you kind of using Lucy's idea? I mean, it's the idea that Lucy has put forward.
Yeah, many wiser people have come up with that way before me. I can't take any credit.
For a venue, how do you start with the fans?
It's interesting because, as you say, it's what it means to people. And at the moment, we're doing a big piece of work. There's a great company called Media Insight Consulting. You should all use them.
Never heard of them. Who?
No, but looking at motivations to come to a show. And I think it's really easy for those of us who work in music or, who are afflicted with this, awful thing called fandom, like we all are, and who we might be the ones who, certainly half my team, I can't get them to do any work in the mornings because they're all too busy trying to get pre-sale tickets to the XX or whatever else they love. But fans have different motivations for going to shows, and something that we're uncovering at the moment, or trying to uncover, is how different people do approach ticket buying, and uncovering data like, the fact that there are certain segments of our audience who buy according to a specific date. The first thing they come in and look for is gigs on a certain date. Mm-hmm. Because it's an anniversary or it's a birthday, So if you know that they've done that, and they're the kind of audience that's more receptive to personal service, say, then can we get a record of that it's for a birthday or an anniversary? Can we ask them that at the, point of purchase or whatever? And then make sure that they can live that through when they come to the venue. People come for hen do's and stag do's, or, they're coming with their families. So kind of answering their needs, them as themselves, not just as the person who's bought a ticket.
Well, that was something I was kind of thinking about because, like I said, we are going to talk about data, but data inherently is almost like a mathematical thing. And what we're talking about here is a really emotional connection. So kind of marrying up the really mechanical idea of data and the really human emotion side of things. How do you make data part of your marketing when your marketing is so emotional? Fred, do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. And I think we're not helped at the moment by the fact that there's an excessive focus on data. And in the end, we are working in a business that essentially packages up and or connects emotion with people. So on some level, despite the fact that I've spent the last 9 years of my life developing consumer insight and analytics, various other things inside the context of a major label, I actually believe that we need to understand it as something which is there to help our gut work, but it's something that sometimes you have to disregard entirely. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's all about picking up the breadcrumbs and the clues and being smart about understanding how things are interconnected. So data is numbers. Numbers aggregated together are more numbers, possibly graphs, maybe a pie chart if you're lucky. And in the end, this is not a business where a 3% improvement in collection ads really fires the imagination. So on some level, I think most of the way that we are translating numbers into action is through language and through culture, and through the own stories that we tell inside the building. So we've seen a massive change in our business certainly in the record business, from using the album as the unit of conversation around which you configure a story about an artist, mm-hmm. to a world in which the songs are the story, the social aspect and the videos and the stuff around it are the further part of the story, and actually the most important connective tissue is the live experience. Mm-hmm. So you don't tour to promote an album, you release an album to go on tour. And so every single one of those things fires off a shitload of information and data, but the truth of it is that it really is all about language. And therefore I think the quicker we as an industry remember that and understand that and don't get carried away, the fact that you can know everything doesn't help you know anything. In the same way that infinite choice means that you always go back to the same old shit that you listened to before because you don't know how to find anything. So I think that's our challenge. Is we have to create a connective tissue between an artist and a fan. Yeah. And the way that we do that is by understanding that the medium by which they connect and the product or the thing that they consume are all intermixed. They're not nice and tidy blocks anymore like they once were.
Karma, does that mean the pressure's massively on you guys then, in terms of you're releasing an album to have that live experience?
No, I think it depends sort of like what artists you're talking about here, but a lot of the time when an artist has released an album, we work with the label very closely to sort of still promote the album and promote the experience, and promote the fact that they're going on tour and they're going to experience something from that album live. So, there is pressure, but we still all sort of work together, because at the end of the day, we're promoting an artist as a whole, not just, the segmented tour part of it or the album part of it.
Yeah. Kind of moving away from that, because I don't want to necessarily just carry on about data the whole time. I think one of the things, me not coming from a marketing background, something I find really interesting now, and we are talking about it a lot, is the whole streaming thing and how marketing is now working with streaming. Lucy, how are you making streaming work with your marketing ideas? Or what tools are you given?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there could be, and I'd like to see more sort of tools on the streaming services themselves, because I think that's a bit of a problem at the moment. And again, there are a lot of other people who talked about this, but just saying that, on Spotify, for example, and don't get me wrong, I love Spotify, and they're a great partner for us. We work with them very closely, obviously. But I would like to see more marketing features on the platform, so that when somebody's discovering your artist, maybe hearing them for the first time, there's some kind of features where you're able to find out more about that artist, connect with them, maybe message them or whatever it might be, without having to go to an external, third-party platform like Facebook or whatever, Instagram, whatever it might be. And at the moment, that sort of artist connection on streaming service, I think, is completely lacking. And because so many people are discovering the artists, primarily through playlists, that's also a bit of a problem in terms of building your artist identity and their connection with an audience, because, there's no sort of real context or interactivity around just a song in a playlist, and like I said, there's no way to find out more about the artist, really, even if you want to. Then, you're going to have to come out of Spotify and go elsewhere to find that. And then maybe come back if you're really interested, but how many people drop off during that journey? So it's a bit frustrating as a marketer, because people are kind of probably discovering artists mostly through playlists, and kind of therefore they've chosen to engage with the context or purpose of a particular playlist and not with a particular artist. So I think there's a huge challenge there for artists and their teams to kind of work out, how do you go about building that connection on streaming services and trying to engage people more. And I guess it's just, for now, until I know, that Matthew Ogle, who's the product lead at Spotify, who developed, the amazing personalised playlists like Discover Weekly and Release Radar and all of that, he did a keynote at ADE here last October, and I asked if he was planning to, if they were working on features to kind of connect artists and audiences on Spotify. He said, yes, they are, and I don't doubt for a second they are, because they have, the most incredible data science team and product team in the world. But in the meantime, I guess it's just a case of trying to work out how you connect the audiences, via not just streaming, but making sure that, you've got all of your platforms covered. And of course, although streaming is super important, you'll still have your audiences who are, buying downloads and buying CDs and buying physical. And, you can't just focus on streaming, obviously, even though it's, increasingly all important. You've got to make sure you're catering for different levels of fans across different platforms. You're trying to connect with them via streaming, sure, but also you've got to, be on your email, your website, collecting data, remarketing, advertising, all of your social platforms, all of that kind of thing. So
your job's bigger than ever, basically.
Yeah, exactly, basically.
It's worth saying something, which is, again, this shift from, it's often being talked about, the shift from ownership, the album model, to access, the streaming model. But really, the true impact observing it is like we're now like in the 50s on steroids. So Spotify is an environment, and streaming services are an environment, as is YouTube, because that's the biggest streaming service of all, are song-based distribution models and consumption models. And they play very heavily on the idea that a large proportion of the population is consuming music served to them based on context, mood, time of day, activity. Like, here's my fuck off, I don't want to listen to you because I'm in a bad mood playlist, or I'm on the tube, or I'm at the gym, or I'm whatever. Breakup, sad, coffee, etc. Only less than 10% of the active base on Spotify, in any instance, are leaning into discovery. So discovery is what fanatics do. Everyone else consumes based on mood, time of day. And it's like therefore it's like a radio station where the context isn't set by a DJ. So the problem is playlists drive loyalty to songs, but then our job is to pivot out of the song into talking about the artist, because it's something.
So how do you do that?
Well, if you take Chainsmokers as an example with something that we're working on, or you take something like Rag & Bone, two examples from Sony at quite extreme ends of the Chainsmokers, song, 3 massive hits. If you go out on the street and you say, play the 3 songs, everyone can sing along, who are they? Is it Calvin Harris? I don't know. And so they release an EP, but the EP is like a micro aggregation of 3 things that have worked, a mini playlist, if you will, which allows you to then flip out of that and say, you know those 3 songs that you know? They're made by these people, and they're called the Chainsmokers. And then you get them to do a song with Coldplay.
So you have to have 3 hits at least.
But there's that, or Rag & Bone, which is the opposite, which is kind of ticking along on a streaming service, and the song is out there in the ether, and then it's a visual performance on X Factor that connects the dots. So he's on like a chill-out playlist or whatever, and then suddenly he's everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think the thing is that our building blocks, from a marketeer's perspective, are how do we use song. The songs used to be the adverts for the trailers for the film that was the album, and now the songs are each their own piece of a story. They're chapters in a book. You see what I mean?
So the marketing plan has to be bigger than the streaming service always. It's like Lucy
it's
was
what
saying,
Lucy
it's
said at
hitting
the
all.
beginning. You think I have an artist here, and the essence of that artist is whatever they want to be and whatever story they want to tell. And I have a set of people that I believe are going to be interested or could be interested if I can make a meaningful connection with them, and I need to do that everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I want to hit this really quickly because I think it might be a bit of an antiquated conversation even now. But the streaming exclusive, is it good marketing? Is it bad marketing? Is there a time when it's good? Anyone?
We generally discourage them. You know, all of the artists and labels we work with, you know, we try and encourage parity across all services. But I will say, you know, because I work across different markets, across Europe, there are territories like Russia, for example, where sometimes it makes sense because Apple Music there, for example, is growing so fast and it's already so far ahead of any other service. And we have a great relationship with Apple there, and sometimes we're able to get, you know, really great campaigns together, which we know are a huge benefit to the artist. Otherwise, you know, we wouldn't do it, but it really does help to drive their sales and their streams and their exposure. And we actually have a relationship with Apple there where we're able to kind of use marketing longer term as well. It's not just about like, you know, short term spike in sales or streams or whatever it might be, but they'll actually work with us on a longer term basis. So it becomes kind of more like an artist marketing partnership and not just a streaming exclusive for 1 week or whatever. It kind of goes far above and beyond that and encompasses sort of advertising and them helping to promote the artist's live tours and that kind of thing. So I think for us in that context, exclusives make sense, but otherwise, you know, for other kind of markets and generally we discourage that because, you know, I think you have to be everywhere, right? And you know, if you have a record that's being premiered or press or radio or whatever and stuff, and you know, and you want people to discover you, and it's on a playlist, you know, you want to be everywhere, right? Because as we were saying earlier, you know, your audience is going to be fragmented. It's more fragmented than ever, you know. So you've got to be kind of across all platforms. You've got to be serving all audiences, you know, giving the audiences what they want when they want it, really, you know. That, and I think that's, you know, the biggest benefit to an artist if you can do that.
There's one thing I would add as well, which is, and then I promise I'll shut up for a bit, but is that actually I think what's quite subtle about some of these things, I mean, by and large, if we do live in an access economy, which we do, then it would seem foolish from a sales perspective to restrict the possibility for people to consume because you're going to drive them somewhere else. The instances of people swapping from Spotify to Apple Music on a free trial to get the Frank Ocean album and then swapping back when it came on the service is a thing. However, what's I think more subtly going on about all of these players is they're looking at what's happening in video like Netflix and Amazon Prime. So actually, are they exclusives or are they original content plays in which actually they're starting to move into, because they've got, I mean, Apple could buy the entire music industry with its cash flow and have change to buy loads of other things too. So on some level, they're getting into the original content game. And of course, this social media, always-on world is content hungry. And there's a finite amount of money you can spend. So if someone comes to you and says, okay, Frank Ocean, I'm going to give you like however much money you need to make a video of you building a staircase for 45 minutes, done. So there's something about also facilitating artists' creative vision, which I think they've been quite smart at doing, and tying into storytelling as marketing. And is that an exclusive?
Right, so it's really funny that you brought that up because when I was thinking about this panel, I was thinking about the fact that we're all on Facebook, we have Instagram stories, and then the Frank Ocean video, then we had the Beyonce video album. And I think there was a period of time where the video as a marketing tool kind of dipped. And I feel like it's on the way back up. I mean, is video a focus in marketing again now? Carmi, you're nodding like you agree with me.
Definitely for me, when promoting tours, I find that video content, just from looking at reporting, so if I post video content and original content, like direct from the artist, there was an artist recently that we put out on like a special one-off show in his hometown. He did a sort of video. We took him to the sort of like arena there. He filmed a video there. It was 19 seconds long. The sort of like interaction and response that we got from that, just off the back of that, trying to sell tickets, was just immense. And you just can't get that from sort of like normal posts that we do socially. So yeah, definitely for me, video works very well, and it's definitely on the up.
Emily, are the O2 doing anything video-wise in terms of content to promote the venue?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a content team who are out on the red carpet, you know, and that kind of thing at the Brits, and we'll be there. We'll have almost every gig covered to make sure that we've got original stuff. I mean, the other night I couldn't make it to the Green Day show, and I was watching our stream coming from, you know, little bits of it, and seeing people right the way to the back of the arena jumping. It was just incredible. And I thought, God, I wanted to be at that show, and bought a ticket for British Summertime. So, you know, it's such a valuable tool, as Karma says, and obviously Karma's people put shows on at our place. We host Killy shows, and every time that I know we get content from you and we seed it out from us as well, yeah, as you say, it does wonders.
So kind of along those lines, so videos almost not interactive. You watch it, but there's not a lot you can do with it. And Lucy, you're saying you need to be everywhere, you need to be doing all these things. Do fans of artists need more than ever to get an engagement out of them? Do you need to do more now than you ever have done previously? And if so, what is that? What is it in marketing that you need to be doing now to grab that attention?
I think, so firstly, it feels like you sort of have to be on more platforms than ever. That's sure. And just speaking about video, you know, obviously video is, like you said, having a huge kind of resurgence, if you like, and it really is the most effective way in most cases of marketing. There are more video platforms than ever as well. You know, there's Musical.ly and I had to try very hard then not to say Musical.ly, because I know everyone gets Musical.ly and Musical.ly confused all the time, and sometimes Musical.ly fans tweet Musical.ly with angry tweets. But anyway, yeah, so everyone's into, you know, Musical.ly and YouTube, and, you know, there's a lot of UGC content around there as well, actually. You know, so so I feel like video kind of tells a story, right, most effectively, like more effectively than a photo or a text update or whatever, and that's part of the reason why it's so effective at grabbing people's attention. And then equally, the UGC aspect as well is interesting because, you know, as an artist, you do kind of have to do more than ever, because it's harder than ever to stand out, right, and to get people's attention, and not just then to get their attention, but then to try and convert them from being, you know, someone who's listened to a track once or seen a video once, but then actually to becoming a fan and kind of moving them down the marketing funnel a bit, so they might want to come and see you live and what have you. But equally, if you're smart about it, you know, you can sort of let fans do some of the heavy lifting for you as well by kind of tapping into the power of UGC. And, you know, I think so much of good marketing is, yeah, about listening to your audience and putting them first, and kind of, you know, making sure that you're building this community around you as an artist, right, and your music and whatever you're doing, and, you know, whoever you want to be, as Fred was saying earlier, you know, whoever you are as an artist, you got to be communicating that, but also listening back to what your fans are saying about you and what they want from you, and kind of, and how they interact with each other as well. Because I think if you're doing your marketing right, you should have a really engaged community of fans. So, you know, I think it's more than ever a two-way thing, where, yes, as an artist, you kind of do have to do more marketing than ever and stand out and get people's attention and be across all these platforms and everything. But equally, you know, your fans are kind of more active than ever as well. And they also have... Oh, sorry, Fred. I promise I'll let you talk in a second. But, like, they... yeah, they're the ones who will tell you, you know, what works and what doesn't and stuff. But, you know, as an artist, you have to make sure you're listening to that.
I think there was a really good example of that recently, where 21 Pilots did their shows at Ali Pali, and they got their fans to design the posters in the tube as they went in. So, you know, all these fans are piling in on the tube, and they could see the posters that they designed as they were coming up. Yeah. But that kind of leads on to something else that I was thinking about, that we're talking about technology constantly, like we're looking forward, we're talking about VR, we're talking about AR, we're talking about streaming. But is there something to be said about going back down to basics and kind of almost like that guerrilla marketing and getting right back down to where we were?
I mean, the simple answer to that is the most important thing in this world is you can no longer bullshit a bullshitter. So just make good things and don't worry about anything else. Don't get hung up about the platform or the channel or this, that, and the other thing. Again, there's only two things that matter, the artist and the fan. Yeah. Everything in the middle is connective tissue, and if it does its job in driving engagement between and getting those, it's a dating agency, to get them to fall in love, then you're fine, you're done, and it doesn't matter whether it's a hand-drawn poster or like a £1 million VR experience. But I think the other thing to distinguish is there's different types of content. So when you talk about Beyonce or Frank Ocean or whatever, also I'd like to make a plea if we could stop using the word content. Yeah. Because I'd like to propose an alternative, which is, let's say content, because that's what you are when you're happy. So if something is good,
so
you'll be happy. But I don't want, content is a horrible word. It's just, it devoids everything. Anyway, it's a rant over. But for example, the Beyonce, Lemonade, whatever, that was part of an artistic statement. And if it's true that in this world, engagement is the key metric, to use another buzzword.
We're going to come back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if engagement is a key metric, then actually the Beyonce releasing a video album is a way of saying spend a bit of time, paying attention, rather than having it in your commuting to work playlist. So actually video forces you to look. And if you look at it, we've got the rise of like nano content, like 6-second vines or GIFs and all that. But then we also are capable of watching 13 hours of Narcos, sometimes in one sitting, it turns out, is possible to do.
We've all been there.
So we're also living in an age of maximalist content, so to speak, even though I said we shouldn't use that word. As long as it's good. So the argument then becomes, okay, well, let's create some stratifications. What artistic statement is the artist trying to make? And let's differentiate between things that we are trying to draw attention to, which are my art, and then as an extension of that art, let's look at small ways in which we can converse intelligently in a way that's relevant to the artist. The medium is the message in the right channel for the right person. Mm-hmm. And that's your marketing content. And those may be whatever, GIFs, Vines, fan posters, UGC, a YouTube video, whatever, it doesn't matter. And so in a way, then it's all of a piece. And I think that's part of the problem is we confuse content forces you to think it's just all the same, and it absolutely isn't.
Yeah. But that kind of leads on to something else that I was thinking about what are the metrics for success now? Because, you know, it's not necessarily just
a hit,
ticket sales or, you know, yeah. I mean, in your job, Karma, how do you know that your campaign has been successful outside of ticket sales?
Outside of ticket sales, if essentially at the end of a tour, when our fans are happy, when they're sort of raving about how good the show was, on social media and sort of like spreading the experience that they had at a show, that essentially is kind of success for me, because that means when we're doing the tour next time, hopefully we're doing it, it's just easier to sell. I just know what the fans are looking for then. Yeah. I know what they're happy with. It's just, easier to sell next time around.
Yeah. Lucy, in your job, where do you find your markers?
Well, I guess technically my job is to drive sales and streams for our artists, and that should, you know, by technical definition be the measure of success. But I totally agree with Karma. I think it's much more about how you make people feel. And as Fred said, you know, can you be that dating agency to really connect the artists and the audiences, and can you make them fall in love and bring them together, and just, you know, bring the artists and an audience, but connect them on a much deeper level, you know, really make them feel something that wants to make them, you know, as Karma said, spread the word with their friends and experience you live, and then share that on socials and whatever else it might be.
So for Emily, for you, is it the smiles walking out of the O2 Arena as they leave then? Is that your metric?
Yeah, 20,000 people smiling, that's pretty awesome. And, you know, returning to this thing about being fan-centric, hopefully finding the things that could sort of turn a really good experience into a great one for people. So, you know, making sure that we've got somewhere for everyone to park their buggies when they come for Disney on Ice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know it sounds silly to us, maybe, when we talk about rock shows and stuff, but that's really important. So many different types of people walk through our doors, and making sure that we've got, I mean, we're lucky at the O2 that O2 have their angels in the doorway that makes such a difference to people. You know, and I'm not just, most often asked question, obviously, to them is, where are the toilets? But having somebody smiling and coming up to you when you're walking into a show and saying, how you doing? Are you excited? You know, I saw some of the production stuff earlier, it looks amazing. Yeah. Then, you know, that's fantastic, isn't it? And you're already kind of set up for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think it's just, I mean, just because we've got this huge, shiny venue, I don't think it has to stop there. I think you can do that in, you know, grassroots venues too, making sure the experience is great for fans.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm getting waved at. Does that mean we have to stop or we can take questions? We can take, okay, that's where I was going with this. And does anybody have a question?
This is cheesy, but Chris, I've got a question quickly. Could we have a panel next year where we talk about marketing buzzwords that we really fucking hate, why they're rubbish, and what we can do to have like better ones, like what ones we should be using instead, stuff like that.
Content. Yeah?
I hate millennials.
Job done.
James, did you want to say something?
Yeah. We talked a lot about kind of so far marketing directly to fans, from artist to fan. I want to just explore a little bit more about the B2B kind of overall strategies that you've each got as organisations to contribute wider to talking about music to people in the world, and using a buzzword right now, but diversity. What sort of things do each of your organisations do to make sure that we're showing that music is an all-inclusive thing for everyone? Because it's so hard, because obviously it's almost always, when you've got artists coming to you or you're promoting an artist, it's very much their kind of vision creatively and what they want to do in the communities that they want to talk to. How do you make sure that on a wider level the marketing strategy talks to people on behalf of the O2 or Kilimanjaro? Sorry for the difficult question.
So from my point of view, trying to make everything diverse it's quite easy for me. I'm a woman, and as well, I'm not white, so
Ticking all the boxes.
Ticking all the boxes. Thanks, Chris. I just make sure, basically, when I'm marketing a specific tour, I make sure that from all angles. So you know, there's like a great radio station, and I'm really sorry if this is a bit, I don't know, controversial, but. You know, I make sure that I market to a radio station called like Gadio. There are different things. You know, you have to look at your fans and what they're listening to and how they're interacting with these artists, and make sure that you're sort of like pushing it out to all of the areas, not just like the main sort of like broadsheets and like streaming. And also, I just make sure in my marketing, I try and make it as diverse as possible. So if I'm doing radio, I will always ask for voiceover artists that are both men and women and from like different ethnic backgrounds, so I can choose a voiceover artist that, you know, if you like think of TV and radio, a lot of the time TV and radio ads are voiced over by male voiceover artists, and
it's not me. You don't need to look at me.
No.
I'm a white 46-year-old male. I am the problem. I apologise profusely.
But, you know, we just accept that, we listen to it, and we don't question it. So, yeah, I just try at different things like that.
Has anyone else got a question?
Fred, how old? You didn't tell me.
You either heard it or you didn't hear it.
Does anyone else have any questions? No? Oh my God, amazing. Okay, well, I guess we'll carry on then. Karma. How do you think the relationship between manager, agent, and promoter should work in a marketing world? We just had that panel about constant emails and being CC'd on everything. As a marketer, how do you manage those massive teams that come around an artist?
Difficult question.
Sorry, I know you're hanging.
Well, so obviously it is a case-by-case basis. I can't control how many people are involved, unfortunately, as a promoter. But I do try and make sure everything is as concise as possible if I'm sending out an email. I try and avoid calls. I try and avoid meetings. But if, you know, I had like a recent tour and there's so many people involved in it. There's like 2 agents, there's like 4 managers, there's me, there's the 2 PRs from the label, there's my PR for the tour, and it just kind of got all a bit out of hand, and you just have to take the reins and just be like, this is what we're doing, I know what my job is, I know how to market this tour, and I think we should do this. And it kind of worked, which is surprising.
Do any of you ever struggle where you perhaps have a really out there idea for marketing and you have to convince a large team? How do you tackle that situation where you really have to sell an idea?
I think the thing is, you can sell an idea as much as you like, right? And it can be the best idea in the world as far as you're concerned. But if the artist isn't into it, I think that's, you know, obviously that's the biggest problem, and it just doesn't matter how great your idea is and how well you sell it. If you don't get their buy-in, forget it. Don't pursue it. There's no point. You know, because we've all been there in the past, probably as marketers. You know, where you have a great idea and you think, yes, this is going to be brilliant and stuff, and actually, and maybe sometimes the artist or their team, you know, management or whatever, might at first go, great. And then you get further down the line and they're like, oh, yeah, sorry, no, actually, they don't want to promote this and they don't want to get involved and actually they change their mind or whatever it might be. You know, it happens to the best of us. But I think it's so crucial, you know, as Fred said, you can't bullshit it, right? So the audience will know if it's not coming from the artist and if it's inauthentic and if it's, you know, a marketer trying to do it on the artist's behalf, but it's not really coming from them. They know. It's so obvious. So you can't, you know, you've got to get the artist buy-in when you're selling an idea. And if they don't buy it, don't pursue it, you know, because they've got to be comfortable with it. It's got to be right for both them and their audience and stuff. And for me, that's the most important thing when it comes to marketing ideas.
Should a marketing plan always come from an artist first then? Or is it your job to go to them?
No, I think no. Like because every artist is different, you know, again, like, and some of them are really proactive and they love coming up with ideas themselves. They love being the person to do all their social media and whatever else. And the other artists are really not like that at all and they're not comfortable with it and they don't want to, you know, and they'd rather have somebody else do it. And in those cases, it might be better if somebody else does. But it's always on a case-by-case basis, I think. You know, you can't really make general rules and say, like, it's always better if an artist does this or if they don't. It just comes down, I think, to what the artist is comfortable with and who they are and how they like to communicate with their audience and all of those things, really.
And fan first as well, right? So what do the fans want from that artist? Or
and if you're listening, you'll find great ideas from the fans usually that you can tap into.
And the way they communicate. Do they want to hear their news via email? A lot of them do, actually. Or do they want it in some other way? And let yourself be led by that sometimes, don't you?
We had a Fast 15 yesterday that was talking about chatbots. Are any of you using bots in your marketing yet? Would you, if you're not already?
I mean, we have done, and you know, we did. There was a Robbie Williams one. We've done this various times, and again, it was most of these ideas are. I think it's dangerous to follow the tech, right? Because sometimes then what you're doing is you're effectively talking about a feature set that no one gives a flying fuck about, and you're submerging the artist underneath. Oh, look, you can do this in VR, and then what you've got is a 360 video that makes people feel slightly seasick. So the use of bots, often when we're thinking about those ideas that come from a technology standpoint, the way we arrive at the idea, first of all, is it's never one person's idea. It's bringing as many of the relevant people together as early as possible, and then placing the artist and the art and the story they want to tell and what we know about audiences in the middle and creating what we call a DNA that kind of binds them. And then from there, that becomes a platform for ideas. So the idea of using bots were always cases where we wanted to showcase for example, the Robbie bot was, how do we showcase some of his personality at scale in a way that is kind of also a bit tongue-in-cheek because he was playing with the idea of, you know, am I relevant? How am I relevant in social media? If I did a Robbie bot, also his name lends itself, you know. And so in a way, it's playful. And what a lot of the times what we're thinking about is what media will this idea earn us? So will someone pick it up and say, oh, do you know what? This is the first time Artist X has done that, and then that generates a story somewhere else. So I think in the end, it has to feel right, and it has to be genuinely something that binds the artist and the audience in a way that's relevant to both parties. Otherwise, it doesn't work. It never does.
And I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's about the fans and it's about being real, I think, basically, is the moral of this panel. Hi.
It is.
You right?
Yeah. How you doing?
Do you want us
You
to
were
start?
slightly sinister there, by the way,
well,
Chris.
It's a bit weird.
It turns out when I'm stood over there, you're
Sneaking
right
up.
there.
Make it look like he's.
I'm afraid we've run out of time.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is the worst bit of my job when I deal with billions of rows of data. This is the worst bit of my job. Guys, thank you very much indeed for that fantastic panel. Very sorry to cut across it.